we'll be partnering with a couple different organizations on campus. So like bring forward a speaker, or bring forward a speak out or a brown bag or something of the sort. And then as well, this coming Sunday will be an all SGA meeting. Abby Waxler, our chief of staff, is organizing that, and we should be hearing about that soon. As well, tonight I just came from the Porter Cow Dining Consulting. So we have invited, this wasn't originally on the agenda, but we've invited them to talk to you and get your feedback. So please make sure that your voices are heard and you're being active, because you're here to represent your peers and your classmates, and it's important that you are reflecting their opinions. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Treasurer.
I'm filling in for Ryan and Poku today. Poku's here, so you can take over. I don't know as much, but
yeah, I can guess. So this is our first time doing it, but we'll go through some applications so you can pull it up.
Do you have a chair with me here?
So this week ran smoothly with the exception of Lasso. So as you could take a look, so the top were the meetings we had, and that's over $1,000, and underneath that was Slate. And for Lasso, they were trying to get a speaker on campus, and the budget just wasn't good. I can pull up the reasons. So they wanted the Colgate in, but they hadn't thought through in terms of the availability of the time of the Colgate in, so it was all booked out during that time. In terms of the artists, they hadn't really, one second, let me pull it up. So the other reason why we denied this proposal was they required a private card, even though the artists that it required, the students really hadn't done research in terms of the shuttle from Syracuse. So it looked like their advisor just gave them the bad advice, and the students hadn't done research, so it didn't seem like a student initiative. So we denied it, but we told the students that would work with them to make sure that they have the proposal on point and that they're being fiscally responsible. Am I supposed to go through all the proposals? This is my first time doing this. Or if you have any questions about any of the proposals. I think we only denied Lasso and the Environmental Action Group, and we denied them because it sounded like they asked food, ice cream for their meetings, and it's against the BAC policy to fund foods for meetings. So that was the reason why we denied the Students for Environmental Action. And Lasso, even though we denied it and the group is not happy, we just want them to be fiscally responsible. So we're working with them to make sure that they submit a proposal that the BAC can approve. Any questions?
Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, how much money do we have back?
So $175,000. And this is not including SBW taken out yet. So if we take out SBW, which we have to decide the BAC, I'm guessing it might be around, last year we gave them $80K semester. So if we take out, we're thinking maybe $90K because security went up. So let's assume $90K, we'll have between around $80K left, 75 to $80K.
So we are okay, so not to worry about at the end of the semester then?
Yeah, so I would say early in the semester, that's when a lot of the programming occurs. So later in the semester, things slow down. So I think we'll be fine. And worst case scenario, we have $30,000 for emergency funds that we can move if we really need to, but I think we'll be fine.
Thank you.
For those boxes in the bottom-ish column, what does that indicate when it's empty?
Which one?
So you see how there's a money amount, right? And then like it's empty on the side where you have like an allocation of how much you're giving?
Requested an allocation?
Yeah. So like, for example, third to last, fourth to last, fifth to last, right? Those boxes are empty. What does that mean?
That's fine. This should have been, so Bork and Nick usually take care of this, but this should be zero since we denied it. But these were fine. usually if we adjust the budget, if you take a look here, they requested 6,400, but they forgot to include the NG cleanup, so we adjust the budget for them, and it ended up being 6,450. So if we need to adjust, then it becomes we change it for the allocation, and then we change it from their request. But this was just a minor thing that needs to be changed.
Any other questions?
Any questions? And I think we're seeing college Republicans next week, and the Senate will later vote on that. And then we have Gospel Fest coming up. So those are the two main possibly controversial proposals that will be coming to the BAC, and they're above 30K, so the Senate will have to vote on that. So just giving you a heads up. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Moving on, liaison Dewey is not here. So parliamentarian.
Hi everyone, it's good to see you all. I am back here in front of you. I decided that this was the best place for me to sit to contribute to the meeting, and to have a cool black curtain on my table now. So that's really exciting. About an hour ago, the legal director for the ACLU was sitting in this seat here, so we're following in the footsteps of giants, I guess. You'll notice that we have eye clickers now to vote on bills and legislation in Senate. You'll find that it's pretty simple. We'll usually just do like an A for yes, B for no format. If you have any trouble, please let us know before the vote's over. Be prompt about that. But it should work smoothly. We've worked everything out, got everything set up and ready to go. Let's see what else. I'm planning, my big project for the year is to kind of overhaul the Constitution and kind of conceive of a new one. So it's going to be a year-long process. It's going to be a big process that requires a lot of you giving your input, giving your feedback, your thoughts, and so forth. So this week my goal is to work out tentatively what that process is going to look like. And it's going to include all of you on some level. So I'm going to be in touch with what I work on there. So be ready for that. And by this point in the semester, you guys, your committees should be working on like a lot of business, putting things to the floor and so forth. If there's things that you're working on and you don't really know how to take the next step and how to achieve tasks that you're trying to accomplish, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, reach out to them, reach out to any of the leadership. We're here for you, and we want you to do things, and we will work with you to help you do things. So we're always here if you need anything. I think that's pretty much it. Let's have a good meeting.
Thanks, Luke. Secretary of Campus Affairs.
Alright, I'll stand right here. Hey everybody, hope you guys had a great weekend. Not too much on my end. Meeting with Dean McLaughlin on Thursday to discuss Rest Life and the map report. Gov boards are doing fine. Don't have a full meeting with them. I mean, you all will see them on Sunday, but I don't have a full meeting with them until Tuesday, October 16th, I believe. So I'll have an update on you on how the progress in their own committees are going. Also, we have to selecting a second academic advisory member and also campus safety as an advisory committee as well, and we have to select those. That one kind of just popped up. So those should be filled by fall break, but other than that, does anyone have any questions? Okie dokie.
All right. Thank you, Speaker of the Senate. So right now we have a ton of items in new business, a lot of very exciting items. I hope you all read the free speech report that I sent out to y'all. But otherwise, yeah, just to echo Jenny, please be totally respectful, be thoughtful. Because we do have guests here today, it's a very special day, and it's a very great day to get done with some discussions. So yeah, moving on into committee reports, academic affairs.
Good evening, people. Two things. The first is that we updated office hours, and the second that we have ongoing conversation about cell phones. So this is your Colgate SGA official site, and when you go to the website, there's academic resources, and you go there and you see a nice black button over there, and if you click that, direct you to enter your
after you sign in.
yeah. not gather many information. So, for example, last year we don't have things. It either indicates the professor did not provide any information, or the professor is out of Colgate at this point. Of time. Special thanks to Abby Oxler. And the second thing is about the set forms. And from here, I would like to introduce Mika, who's very few senators.
Thanks, Yunhee. So in our Academic Affairs Committee meeting last time, we brought up the idea of re-examining how set forms are composed, whether we feel the questions are useful for professors, whether we feel that question at the end is good, or whether it's just kind of a venting space for all kinds of concerns that students might have. So Yunhee brought up the idea of visiting with Neil Albert, who is the current registrar, but he's also served as the head of institutional planning and research. So today I met with him, and he was telling me that actually last year, the Faculty Affairs Committee chaired an initiative to re-examine the set forms, go through all those questions on the Likert scale, where you can say, you know, somewhat, not at all, don't know, and they felt that they representatively covered all the elements of teaching. That doesn't mean that we can't look at it again, but they're scheduled to examine them every 3 years. They just examined them last year. So based on what Senate thinks, what the Academic Affairs Committee thinks, we can decide whether we want to go forward with that. But it is on the faculty's mind, and it has been done just last year. It's also kind of a sensitive topic because these do get used in promotion and tenure. And if we want to, as a Senate or as a committee, work with that data to look at who's saying what, we actually do have to obtain permission from the Faculty Affairs Committee, and then Neil can share it with us since he's the steward of that data. But that's kind of the story on that right now, so it'll be something to consider as we go forward. Any questions? Sweet.
All right, thank you, Micah. Thank you, Yunhee. External affairs.
Hi. So this week we were supposed to be meeting with the church and also the mayor. I just emailed the church leader, the person who's in charge of international student hosting. So we're gonna meet and hopefully we can like hash out some of the details with regards to that. We were supposed to meet with the mayor on Friday, but she was called away on business, so she won't be back in her office until Monday, which is a little awkward because we were hoping to get the Village on the Green event done on like October 12th, but since we are starting, we're going to be a little bit behind. We're thinking somewhere around like the 19th area. Yeah. We're just reaching out to like on-student organizations who can help out with the event. So hopefully we can get a student group to like play. We can talk to other, like we can talk to the Cage about getting like lawn games, etc. So very excited, and hopefully it all goes super well. Yay.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Janui. Government affairs.
Oh, okay. So first we met and we decided to change it so that Kira and I are going to be co-chairing and Joelle is going to be our secretary. And the bills that we were trying to work on is that we want to make the Google account available to the Director of Communications along with the President and the Parliamentarian, as opposed to just the Parliamentarian and the President. And we also wanted to begin addressing like the communication gap between like the Gov Board and the Senate. And in addition to that, we were thinking about working on ways to motivate attendance.
Yeah, just revisiting the
Yeah, just
attendance policy
revisiting
across
attendance
SGA.
policy. And yeah. Do you have anything else to add? Okay. Well, that's what we're working on. Anyone have questions? Yes.
Yeah, have you guys thought about putting all Gov Board members in the SGA grouping?
Who? What did you say, Jenny?
All the Gov Board members are in the grouping.
But what did Jenny just say?
They all are.
They all are.
Okay.
Chris.
Yep.
All the Gov Board members
Student Affairs.
So Aya's not here today, so I'll be representing Student Affairs. Last week, Aya and I met with Elias, who is the cabinet international student representative regarding the flag debate. Elias basically said that removing flags is not something, it's not an option, and in the past, whenever new students from different places arrived, just new flags were added, and there's still space. But anyone who has any issues with wanting a new flag or anything should talk to Elias or Kara Hunter, who's the Dean of International Students. We're working on a bunch of different projects. Printer expansion, which didn't completely get done last year, so we're continuing that. Readdressing trash cans on campus. More water fountains in residential buildings, toilet paper and tow hose, and then maybe 24-hour parking during finals, because during finals, people can't park 24/7, but people are in the library 24/7. So, what else? Menstrual hygiene, adding more charging stations, and I'm working on a resolution for making implicit bias training kind of a mandatory part of new student, new member education and GLOs. So if you would like to work with me on that, please let me know. That's it. Thank you.
SOC?
Hi, so Dewey's Lab is still right now, so those who don't know me, I'm Al, I'm our secretary. So we have 3 clubs that are waiting to be approved today, which is the Baking Club, the Political Review, and the Actuarial Society. They've all completed their petitions, so we're approving them today to have access to the BAC funds and stuff like that. And then our committee specifically, we're right now trying to figure out different seminars and whatnot that people that want to get a club approved have to go through first. We're talking about creating mini course on financial responsibility. Most of these are
Thank you very much. CLC?
Hello. We just had our CLC meeting. It was very productive. There's some fun updates. The sophomore class is looking to partner with a charitable organization in Utica that works with refugees, which is a really cool idea, I think, for class council and also student government to be linked to a charity. So they're meeting with the coach to look at that. The first years are planning a first year formal, which is exciting. We are planning a fall fest, so I'd love to meet with Anna and Jamie to talk about working in the town, because we want to do something on Whitnall Field and work with the community as well. So that could be a collaborative event if you're looking to be involved with that. We're planning a tailgate for our women's hockey game to try to boost attendance and work with local restaurants and stuff. The junior class in particular, we're going to have an event on October 18th to write postcards to our friends abroad. So those are our updates for now. Thank you. As a webmaster, the live stream is now up, so this is being recorded. Hi, Eli. Miss you. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on into new business. So before we can actually vote on anything with our new fancy iClickers, we actually need to appoint someone to handle the iClickers and handle the voting. So it took me a long time to choose between all of the people who volunteered for the position, but your new transparency liaison, Micah Durkers. And so, but of course I get to appoint, but you all have to approve. So Micah, if you could say a few words before the Senate votes on you.
Hi again, everybody. I'm looking to be the transparency liaison. Basically what that means is that I'll be tallying the votes that you all cast for all of our iClicker votes for certain issues. Obviously not all issues that we do, for example, voice vote on get counted there, but all the issues on iClicker, I'll tally those up on my monster laptop and report that all to you. And after the Senate meeting, I will send those to Gracie so she can post them on the website so everybody knows what we're voting on. The votes get put on as a group, so it will say, for example, 33 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. Your personal voting record is not put online. I'll be able to see it, but I'm not going to look. It just reports the numbers. I'm not going to look at that. So transparency is going to be conserved, and it's just a really good way to communicate to the student body what Senate's doing and why they're voting on certain issues. So happy to serve.
All right. Any questions? Cool, cool. Okay, you can sit back down because you're also going to need to record these votes. So if y'all could turn on your eye clickers, or, if they're not already on. We can do a hand vote, yeah. Okay, so if I could get a motion to vote. All right, second. All right, all in favor? Cool, okay, so raise your hand if you approve of Senator Micah Durkers for Transparency Liaison. Cool, now raise your hand if you oppose. All right, Micah, you're our new Transparency Liaison. Cool. Okay. So moving on. So last week I sent y'all this report on free speech done by a task force of 13 members of the Colgate community, and so today we have 2 members of that task force today to present to us. So if you'll give me some help in welcoming them to speak in front of our Senate, Professor Spencer Kelly and Christopher Wells.
Psychological and Brain Sciences, and I'm the chair of this task force. These 13 people here were our group. Let me just give a little background about the group. 8 of them were faculty, 4 were voted by the faculty, 4 were appointed by the president, and 3 of those were appointed in consultation with the Faculty Affairs Committee. We also had the president appoint 1 staff member, 1 student, the president of the SGA, Derek Baker, and 3 board members. Now, I'm not going to reread you the charge, but briefly, let me just say that the president asked us to come up with a very broad and aspirational statement of principles on issues of academic freedom and freedom of expression as they pertain to all aspects of the Colgate community. And that's what we tried to do. And I want to walk you through our process briefly. I'm not going to talk a lot. I'll answer questions and hopefully spark a conversation. But let me just let you know of our process. We met all last year in the fall and the spring, a couple times a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And I don't know if you know these people, some of these professors, some of these students. We're a pretty ideologically diverse bunch. In fact, it's, in terms of viewpoint diversity, the most diverse group I've ever worked with at Colgate. And it was hard. It was really, really hard work. We didn't always agree with one another, but the principles and some of the values you see in that document became clear through our process. Some of these shared values that we could talk about as ways of guiding us through some of the difficult times. And in the end, we did all support this document. We all signed this document. Now, don't get me wrong. We don't think this document's perfect. Individually, there are things individually that if we could change, I might change something. Someone else might change something different. But as a whole, as a general statement of principles, which is what we were asked to come up with, we think it frames things the right way. And the goal here in presenting, and when we present to the faculty and presenting to you, is not to put forth any kind of actionable policy language, handbook language. That's not what we're here to do. We're here. Our task force presented a framework for talking about really hard things, and we think we identified some of the key areas that need to be in any discussion on this. And so what we are hoping to talk about is whether or not you as the students feel like these are a good guiding set of principles to navigate through these difficult conversations. And so with that, I really want to put it out there to you to see if you have any questions about these principles, about the values, about the framework, how they relate to one another, any clarification questions, and then if I may ask you to see the kind of ideas that this sparks. What kind of things do you think this could lead to within your body, within the university student body at large? And I don't know in terms of time frame here how this is going to go, but let's just get it started with any kind of clarification or questions that you want to clear up before we can jump into this. Did you want to add anything, Christopher?
Real quickly, because it's awkward sitting up here, folks may have noticed my name's actually not up there. I staff the task force. I work in the president's office, and so I've had some involvement in bringing the language to the Board of Trustees who supported it, and behind the scenes on the faculty side. But I'm not technically part of the task force. I guess the one other thing that I'd add, and I don't mean to get ahead of conversation, but folks may or may not know, the University of Chicago came out with a statement of principles on the importance of academic freedom maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. That sparked a lot of discussions on campuses. Not a lot of folks have followed suit because it is so thorny an issue and can divide folks significantly across partisan or political lines. Colgate's capacity to put together language across the political divide to bring together the entire faculty, the entire board, is actually a fairly significant accomplishment. We've also done something that the University of Chicago did not do, though it's a robust, somewhat lengthy document in the University of Chicago. So it comes down to a statement that nothing ought to trump freedom of expression, academic freedom. That's the bedrock upon which universities must depend. This document says something similar, but it speaks also to the notion that though nothing should trump the importance of free open discourse on a campus, it is possible to think about the ways in which that activity ought to be framed in a sense of community values, shared values that include the potential for constructive engagement, capacity to listen, a certain amount of respectfulness to folks with whom one disagrees. That's probably all I should say as somebody who's not even part of the task force.
Well, that's a good framework. So, questions about anything you read in there? Yeah.
This is more in terms of like the context of creating the task force and the document, but was there, since I'm a newer student, has there been incidences of, say, academic freedom or academic free speech being stifled on Colgate campus that led to this, or is this more in relation to just the ongoing discussion nationwide?
I think it's more of a trying to get out ahead of something that could happen here, because things are happening all over the place, and so I think the president was smart to recognize this as an opportunity to, one of the only few statements that is not a reactive statement, and in that way we had the luxury of really spending time and thinking about it. So yeah, I think this was prompted, that it did have a prompt. Professor Brubaker of the political science department asked the faculty, I think a year ago this past spring, to reaffirm some handbook language, and so he pulled out some pieces of the handbook language that were relevant to these issues, central to freedom of expression, and asked the faculty to vote to reaffirm, and we thought this is something that is an opportunity. Maybe we should do more than just reaffirm. Let's think about this in a deeper way. So that was a prompt, but it wasn't in response, at least to my knowledge, to any huge event. I do remember in talking to Stan, there was some concern, and certainly this came up, I should be clear, it was in the document, but I'll just emphasize, we did a bunch of interviews and questionnaires and talked to people, and one of the things we heard is that some students don't feel comfortable sharing their political views, for example, in classrooms, and just to come up with one example. And I think Professor Brubaker was sensing after the election that there was a climate on campus politics were working their way into the classrooms, and you know, there's varying opinions about the appropriateness of that, and I think that was a prompt, if I may, I don't think I'm putting words in Professor Brubnaker's mouth. I'm recalling that was the trigger, but it wasn't some speaker came and there was a big protest, and it was nothing like that. That's not to minimize the significance of that issue, and I can tell you that was one of the things really across the board, and from faculty and students, people not feeling comfortable speaking up, and regardless of position. In some positions, there was a sense that maybe it's a little safer to speak up about some positions and maybe not so safe in others, and you know, that's a problem. You know, we saw that as a problem. Yep.
If I recall, didn't the president of the University of Chicago come to Colgate spring of last year and give a lecture on free speech based on their statement?
Yes.
I thought I remember Casey being there and some students responding positively, some responding negatively. Was that at all involved in this statement?
We consulted that speech. We consulted a lot of things from the University of Chicago, and I was in Japan at the time, so I missed that. But I was very curious about how that went, and people told me that the dissatisfaction was that it was not contextual. Free speech was just held up as, here's this thing, it's great, and let's celebrate it. And many of and this is echoed in many of the things we've read from students and faculty, is that we need to contextualize that a little bit more. And so I say that we use that speech as a prompt in the way that Christopher said, to think we need to build some things around this. Because it's so powerful. I mean, because it's so powerful, we need to build around it. Yeah. Yes?
So in the next coming weeks, this body will be voting on a proposal to bring in a speaker who many of us are going to see as controversial.
Mm-hmm.
Some might see as the most controversial speaker that we could move this campus.
Mm.
How do you foresee moving forward with this document? I don't mean to say enforce. I don't think enforce is the right word. But how do we bring this document into the consciousness of students? Because this is from a student perspective, if I'm being honest. If this gets sent out as it did last year in just a mass email, I don't think students are really going to pay the attention that it deserves. So
can I clarify, what got sent out last year in a mass email?
There was a campus-wide email that talked about Colgate is working on this free speech document. These are people that are involved here. Some of our goals in writing this document.
We shared the Chicago statement.
Yeah.
So we shared as a prompt for discussion, and that helped inform us writing this statement.
Yeah, I foresee this body, regardless of how the Senate will vote on this proposal that will be upcoming, that there will be students that will be happy about it, there will be students that will be upset. So how do you foresee this document moving forward, and how can we as an SGA or just as a school in general bring this to students? Because when it comes down to it, regardless of how that vote goes, like these are the students in the room that are going to like take the brunt of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're right to think this is nothing in here is enforceable or unenforceable. These are guiding principles, and so let's take these guiding principles. How would we apply them to your process? Great question. I'd say there's three things that you have to consider. The first and most important thing that this document asks you to consider: what's the goal of bringing this speaker to Colgate? What is the educational goal? We have a mission, and we have some very clear goals, and they're not controversial. There were some of the few things we all agreed on in our task force, and I bet we could come up, sharing knowledge, communicating effectively, taking diverse perspectives. These are goals that we hold dear. The first thing you'd want to ask is bringing this speech, giving this speaker the privilege, and I want to emphasize that. It's a privilege to come stand. It's a privilege to stand here before you right now. I recognize that, and I take this very seriously. Giving someone the privilege to stand in front of the student, faculty, the Colgate community and speak. If that person is not accomplishing our goals as an institution, that's a bad choice. So that's the first choice point you have to make. Now, you get past that choice and you say, well, we need to talk about that. I mean, you can't just decide, you just talk about it. But let's say, yeah, I think this person does achieve the goals. We've agreed on that. The next question is, do your homework about how it's going to affect the community. Don't think you understand how it's going to affect the community. Don't think you know, yeah, I know they're going to hate it, you don't know, at least in my experience, we don't know. I didn't know what these people thought. I thought I did. I didn't. And what you have to do, you got to roll up your sleeves and you got to go talking and interacting and get to know people. And so I would say that if you're going to do this, I would not rush that through at all because it takes some time to know the kind of impact it's going to have. And so you'd have to talk to the people, not just who you think they may like it or not like it, but just a process. And so build up an understanding of the kind of impact it would make. And then, once you've done that with a truly open mind, I would say if you don't embody the principles that are in here, if you're not truly being humble about it, you're not listening, you're not really not trying to be tolerant, if you're not doing those things, you haven't done it right. But if you do those things and you assess that, you know what, it's going to achieve the mission, and I think even though some groups are not going to be happy with it, I think they understand now why we think this is good for the community. And hopefully you have built up at least a better understanding so they don't feel blindsided by it. They do feel like they're part of the process of making it a big decision for the community. And I think it's on you to make, you're elected for making some of these big decisions, so it would be on you. And then this is the third part, and we're not there. By the way, this third part, this is aspirational. Trusting that decision. We're not there. Okay? We just haven't built that trust up as a community, and hopefully that's a goal of your SGAs to build trust, and that takes a hell of a lot of work. It took a long time and a lot of tears to get through trusting that group right there, and the payoff is what you see there. That's an unexpected outcome of just really doing the hard work. If that can't happen in a 3-week period, you might want to put the brakes. This is what I'd be thinking. If you put the brakes on such a thing and really, think more, so slow down on that one. So none of those are you must do these things, but if I had this in my mind, and I do now, it's internalized, that's what I'd bring to this room in trying to guide people's decision making. And in the end, if you do it right, then you can trust that the process, you can trust, or at least you can try to start building that trust. So that's what I would say. Yeah. Hey, Hannah.
Hi. So in the document, it said that the university should support a climate of debate and deliberation that is open and robust and must not suppress ideas because some consider them wrong, immoral, or offensive. And I was wondering if you all took into account the idea of I'm sure you did, but the idea of safe spaces, kind of what we talked about, and how those might play into conversations that might be triggering to some, might be hurtful, some beyond just offensive, and where those spaces come into play.
Yes. So you've touched upon one of maybe the most intense discussions we had, and if I could bump it beyond safe spaces, and if I understand, and I'm sorry, I've got too much information, so if I'm over imputing what you said, pull me back. But the idea that, hey, you can speak, it's free, and even if it offends, hey, we still support the speech. There, you're saying, well, what if that offense crosses over into harm, potential harm? Feeling threatened, and that's unsafe. Okay. The first thing that we do in the statement is acknowledge that speech can harm. And I think when you look at what's out there, the University of Chicago statement, they have frankly, some callous sort of things going on there. I think Hannah Gray is quoted as, education is not meant to make you feel comfortable, it's meant to make you think. And that's an intentional, toughen up, kid. I mean, that's the argument, and that's the Zimmer message too. And by the way, that's not working real well for them after Zimmer's Zimmer, like I'm his buddy. I went to the University of Chicago. President Zimmer, excuse me, respectfully, he has had to back away from that a little bit. So just recognizing that speech can harm, and sometimes it's unintentional harm, I think is important. That's the most dangerous harm, I think. you can see intentional harm coming. Unintentional harm is particularly dangerous. So I think that's important to acknowledge it. Now, what happens when a group says, hey, this speech is harming, and another group says, it's not harming me, or what do you think it's harming? What group would you go with there? I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea. And I know that if we're not trying to struggle over to the answer to that question, we're in a lot of troubles, because that is not an easy question to answer. It's not a real popular question to ask, and that's a problem. I mean, if you can't ask that question and be taken seriously, then we're in trouble. So, yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm not evading the answer. It's just I don't have a clear answer.
The one thing I would add is in that group, across the political spectrum, folks recognize that there are different contexts. So, for example, no one thought that the right to free speech means anybody can come into my house and say whatever they want. Your house, your room, your student organization, where you have come to a consensus around rules, particular events where you have set ground rules. Much of this language talks about the public forum that we provide. So I would say the notion the notion of safe spaces is absolutely not outlawed by this language. It does suggest that there would be contexts where it would make more sense than others. That not every space on campus is necessarily going to feel fully safe because of the arguments around sometimes stretching yourself can feel uncomfortable, not fully safe. There's complicated history, particularly for some folks in our community, around being asked to feel uncomfortable. But generally speaking, I would say there's a spectrum in terms of context in which you might think very appropriately about safe space, or where it's more problematic. Not to say impossible, but more complicated.
Another thing that, in addition to recognizing that speech can harm, another thing that we did that was controversial within our group, a lot of debate, and again, not really showing up in some of these prominent statements. The Chicago model is this, let's say it's a free market model. It's University of Chicago, for crying out loud. It's a free market kind of model, and you duke it out, and the best idea wins. I mean, that is essentially what the Chicago statement is. And there's a brutal beauty to that in some ways. But there's also this side that has completely ignored that maybe it's not a neutral playing field. And that we bring up as historically marginalized groups come in with a voice that might not carry as much, or may carry just fine because they're screaming to be heard, and it's not fair to have someone scream and then someone very powerful just has to whisper into a microphone and it gets propagated throughout the university. The recognition that different voices have different power is there, and that was a hard discussion, and I bet any discussion you have on that, if you haven't already tried those discussions, is really hard, but super important. And then the other piece there is that the same speech can have different effects on different people depending on who says it. So that recognition of your position of power affecting others is something we just have to, we can't sweep under the rug, and some statements seem to be ignoring that. Again, the solutions to these problems are not readily apparent at all, but the fact that we need to talk about them is super obvious to me. So yeah, you're right on what we struggled with.
I know you talked a lot about like the intentions of speech versus like the reactions. How do you weigh those two together? Like, if it has a different reaction than the intention, like where does that come in the free speech argument?
Right. So we decided to focus on the outcome regardless of intention. Intentionally we did that because getting into intention is this thorny business. I think that lawyers struggle with this, Supreme Court struggles with it, and I think it's beyond the expectation of any group of college students and faculty to be able to figure out. So we thought kind of to go to the point of, if it does harm, even if it's intended, it needs to be taken seriously. And we need to deal with the consequences of that harm. And I think it also forces some extra work. There's no other way to say it. That if you are saying something that has potential to hit people who are feeling marginalized or vulnerable, you've got some more work to do. I think the onus is on the speaker to more carefully design speech that reaches instead of alienates, pushes back. And so I think what we looked at is harm across the board is bad, intended or unintended, and what can you do to minimize that harm? Then you're just going to increase the likelihood that you have a real conversation. So we did talk about that, and that's how we handled it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'd like to bring in a specific cases. For this summer, I read an article, whether it's from Cornell or other kind of one of the Ivy League schools, that what a professor in the psychology talked about the homosexual issues, that being present with homosexuals can actually lead to more homosexuals in the society. And I heard that a lot of discussions going on in the university and the university board. Student committees are kind of pushing the professors out of the university because that harm the atmosphere of the students and many people. So, for example, if the same conversation or if the same topic, the same opinions, someone said in our university, what's going to happen?
So I don't know about this case, but it would make a difference if this is something that's totally unrelated to the professor's class or the professor's research area. I mean, this is an evolutionary biologist. It would seem to be a different scenario than if this is an art historian. I mean, I'm just making stuff up, but so that would come into the realm of academic freedom, and I can say that we very clearly come down in support of academic freedom if it's within your area of expertise and it is relevant, for example, in the classroom. You should be able to talk about it. The other way to frame, and the reason, and you might think, well, that sounds like a terrible idea, this person's saying these awful things. Just think about it a little bit differently. Do you know that at Colgate, there were some faculty and students who were kicked out of Colgate for standing up for the abolitionist movement? Their research was showing why abolitionist of slavery was it was a good thing. We need to push for. We need to change our ways as a country. That was research and scholarship. Those students that were kicked out of Colgate for saying that. And so when you bring up these specific examples, which we do, the analogy we use, it's a double-edged sword. So if it's going to cut one way, it's going to cut the other way. Guaranteed it's going to cut both ways. We read about the University of Michigan. I don't have exact dates, but in the late 1990s, the University of Michigan enacted very strict speech codes. There were certain, I think it was something, any racialized language that was meant to insult was, you're out. And what ended up happening is that decades later, white students were using this to get students of color kicked out for referring to their whiteness as a inflammatory, racialized comment. And we can talk about that any kind of racism, in my mind, is not good racism. There's no good racism. But the point there was that there was a well-intentioned rule enacted to control behavior, and then it got spun up differently and has these unintended consequences. So we went through countless examples of these scenarios where someone saw it cut one way and then the blade went and cut the other way, and so we decided to just put that blade in a sheath. That's a dangerous thing there because you really don't know, once you build this thing, what it's going to be used for. So that's a great question, and we did consider that.
It's a follow-up question.
If I may, disingenuous. I'm going to take a step away from the particular case you talked about, which is folks might well have a visceral response to. Let's imagine that and the context isn't clear. You're talking about a student who comes with these points of views, a professor, an outside speaker. All those contexts are slightly different. But let's imagine that instead of the particular case you talked about, we're talking about the Flat Earth Society. We have folks who say, I just genuinely believe the Earth is flat. Do we say, you may not speak that on this campus because we don't believe it's true? Probably not from the point of view of a principle of free speech, but may you say, how do you engage with the scientific research? Do you have any evidence that supports what you say, or are you just making assertions? That the notion of free speech does not mean all speech is equally valid. It just means that there's freedom to express it, but you can challenge things that do not make sense, particularly things that seem to you to be pernicious or harmful, and we ought to.
Just a follow-up question, who's going to be responsible or charged when things get in trouble?
Yeah, that's a, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
That's similar to the question about enforcement. And I don't mean to be punting, but I would say this again is not policy language. So it doesn't say once we accept these things, now the faculty has accepted it, the board has accepted it, the administration has accepted it, to the extent that the students endorse it. Does that mean tomorrow we have the following sets of rules and processes? And it does not. It doesn't mean anything in specific for policy process. It just guides our discussions about are there ways that we need to look at our existing policies and process to change them. But that's another, to the extent that this was a very difficult conversation, that's another level, quantum level higher difficulty. There are particular offices that are in charge of, for example, student conduct. There are particular processes and procedures that are connected to faculty, for an HR, to staff. But the answer to your question probably doesn't exist yet. That is, how do these philosophies inform policy? That is the work that still has to come.
So the question is, we do understand that there are pre-existing process and organization to deal with this kind of problems. Once this stigma is adopted, then there should be significant changes, the structure changes to the previous organization and the way they deal with this thing. So can you just provide like a brief forecast how this thing gonna affect this pre-existing structure?
Let me do it in 20 seconds, and then I've used up my allotment. I would say this a lot when the task force met. I've now talked more than I should as a non-member, so I'm going to be done for the rest of the evening, and then I would talk some more. The first thing to say is that, as Professor Kelly said, the initial request that sparked all this work was, can we reaffirm existing language? So it's not the case that it used to be we didn't think there was any value to academic freedom or free speech, but now we do. So everything's got to change overnight. That's actually not the case. This is a refinement of an existing set of philosophies. Mostly has existed for the arc of the existence of this institution. The other thing that I would say is, no, I don't think we can tell you exactly how this is going to manifest. It will not manifest in dramatic changes starting next week. That's just not what's going to happen.
No, but what it will signal, if the faculty voted to unanimously support this, the board is voting officially, they're behind it, and if you voted to support this, it would signal to the university that we got to talk about this more. I don't think we give this enough attention, and to the excellent point early on, which is this in response to some kind of crisis or something like that? No, but let's start building this community intentionally with these values in mind, so that when the storm comes, then we can handle it better. So, and to be honest with you, I don't think that's a kind of a wishy-washy, oh, well, this doesn't mean anything. I mean, we believe strong. I will go to bat for, if you're going to have the discussion, if you're not considering the things in there, you're not thinking hard enough. And as we thought really hard, and these are some smart people, way smarter than I am, coming together and bringing these experiences from outside, Colgate, lawyer, I mean, just really important stuff, and thinking about things as a way of organizing when it comes. And so that, I think that's valuable by itself. I get the sense there is a hunger for some kind of policy. I really get that sense, and I can tell you that I got that sense from that group because we went there all the time, and I had to reel everyone back in. Like, we're not doing that. So I would say this: if this is something that all sectors of the university support, then I think the next step is to start using this as momentum. Say, let's get to work on this, and your group can start working about it in the way that you want, and maybe you can show a success in your area that could scale up. Just like we see this as a little success. 13 people, totally different views, came together to come up with a pretty substantive statement that doesn't have all the answers, but at least puts them in tension with one another. You could do that, and then the next generation of SGA people, senators could build on that. I mean, that's how you could be thinking about this, and I think that's an important start.
I think there is. Someone asked me if there would be a vote on the part of SGA. We're not here to ask to insert ourselves into your governance process and assert that you ought to vote or not. I will say there's an extent to which the successful ongoing deployment of this document feels like a triumph for the institution. I don't know if I've ever been in a faculty meeting where I saw a completely unanimous vote over a contentious topic before. There was a unanimous support from them, unanimous support from the board. It's in its own way, it's a remarkable moment for the institution. I think it has the potential to mean something for Colgate. It would be ideal, this is just me speaking personally, not as a representative of the administration, it would be ideal if the student voice were represented in some way as we move forward with this document. That doesn't mean that you folks have to vote. It doesn't mean that SGA needs to be the body that engages in this way. But I guess I would say it's worth considering how SGA wants to engage with this, because this is a non-trivial moment in the history of the institution.
Is there
Anyone got anything else to say? Thank you very much. Thank you. And yeah, so what they put forward through their work is definitely very impressive. I hope you all have read it. So that brings us to something important that was mentioned toward the end of the presentation, toward the end of the discussion. Obviously, some of you all have differing opinions and ideas about this report. So I think it would be interesting if anyone was comfortable making a motion to vote to show SGA's approval of this document. Just looking for any motion. Yes.
Motion have a vote to show the approval of the document.
Do we have seconds? All in favor? All right.
Should ask if there are any other motions on the floor.
Can I suggest that you go into a caucus perhaps? Because, like, I don't know if you all have read this. It seems like maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But what you're voting on is very significant. And I don't want it to go for a vote before you've had the chance to read it yourself and talk to the people around you. So I would suggest that you caucus or you postpone the vote to make sure that you all have read it.
Do we have a motion? Yes?
Can I do a motion to postpone? I think, I'm not sure, but I'll be honest, I have not gotten a chance to read this. I'm not sure if anyone else has not gotten a chance to read this. And with the significance of it, I think if I'm alone, I might be just talking here, but I think just making sure that everyone gets a chance to double look over this and make sure that we know what we're voting on.
Okay, do we have seconds? Do we have any other motions? All right, all in favor of Senator Boquist's motion? And that does look like the ayes have it. We will postpone discussion on this until next meeting. So so that we actually can have a spirited conversation and debate on this very important document that we have before the Senate today. Anyway, so moving on. Back to the agenda. Hope you all have fun with that. So we also have Porter Co. With us today they're the consulting firm that we use for our dining services. So we have two representatives to speak with us today. So if you'll join me in welcoming them. Is there anything you want to set up?
Pardon me?
Anything you want to set up? Or?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. This is a little bit impromptu. We've been here conducting some focus groups, and we were invited in our last meeting to attend this meeting. So we were grateful for that opportunity. My name is David Porter, and this is Sean Rostad. I'm the CEO and president of Porter Co. Consulting. Sean is the director of management advisory services. Our firm is based in Maryland. We have about 12 people. Our specialty is higher ed. We're independent fee-based consultants. We've worked on a lot of work for your campus over the past 6 years in helping develop and evolve the program and help assist with the RFP and the contract and some of the changes that have occurred. And so Sean and I work on universities all over the country, but we do work independently on behalf of you. And our goal here is, that, as part of this charge, is to really help come up with a vision for dining for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, in that what can be done to evolve the program in Frank, in the Coop, in Donovan's Pub, and maybe even if there's a need for a new location, maybe not, for like on Broad Street or near Broad Street for students living down campus, and kind of what roles do these venues play in your lives as a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and a senior, and then how does that add up to a value for you in terms of if you have meal plans, or in your first year or two have to have a meal plan, and does that, we want there to be a good value, it's kind of, this might be an oversimplification, but kind of make it worth it in terms of your life here at Colgate. And the big part of dining, obviously, is food, but a big part can also be social, in terms of the role dining can play as a catalyst to bring students together as incoming freshmen, or even as different stages of your experience here at Colgate in your life. So I guess real quick, and we didn't really have maybe we've got 10, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, but if there were questions of us, or if you had comments that you'd like to share with us, we really want to hear from you. I mean, that's why we ask these questions and do these focus groups. Sean and I are on campus today, tomorrow, and Thursday. We're talking to senior administrators and faculty, staff, lots of groups of students, and we're going to do a survey as well to further collect your information so we can inform what is unique about each of these venues. And can I just ask questions, or does anybody have any comments about, and I know it's different if you're underclassmen, upperclassmen, but are there issues that you'd like to see addressed in terms of raising the bar as it relates to your food experience in Frank, the Coop, or Donovan's Pub? And it could fall into categories like menu variety and selection, methods of service like all you care to eat or anytime dining versus paying for each item. Hours of operation, obviously Frank is 24/7, but certainly within that 24/7, what's available and when it's available in terms of making it good for you. Operating days in terms of, I guess, just that they're all open throughout the academic year, but customer service, aesthetics, how does it feel? Or maybe there are other schools you've been to, or you've got friends or family members that attend, where you've heard about or visited or seen programs where, boy, if they had something like that on our campus, that would make it even that much better. So let me shut up for a minute. And any comments or questions, sir?
I don't know if you guys have anything to do about this, but Donovan's, I like the new addition of the window. It makes it so much easier just to get your order in and just have a seat. So I know that's really good. I really enjoyed that.
Very good. Thanks.
I'll be honest, one thing that I would like to see changed is I've noticed on some of the dishes, on the forks, they don't seem fully washed, and sometimes you'll still get food residue on them. And especially with as much sickness that goes around this campus, I just feel like we really should kind of make that a priority. like, I know I've gotten sick a lot in the past, and I really don't want to get sick again in the future. I just feel like that cleanliness should be addressed.
And is that primarily Frank?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two things about Frank. One's like, I feel like once a week, literally can't find a fork. Like they're just out of forks, which is kind of a problem. And also, I don't know if anyone else can attest to this, but like when I walk in near like the area where like people drop their food, it just smells so bad. But like, it's all revolting. I don't know.
So when you walk into Frank, the trade drop area, there
Yeah.
smells of rotten food or something like
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Which like I don't think was a problem last year, but it's really become. a
Cleanliness of that area is an issue. Sanitation, okay. Sir?
I guess in Frank, there are like certain time periods where there are like, I guess you'd call them like dead hours. There's not really a lot of new food being made, or there aren't like, a good amount of options. I guess like making sure that, you know, you guys cater to those times.
So if you're open, if they're open, have a kind of a robust selection of food all the time, not just some of the time. Okay?
To add on to that, just like I feel like a lot of us get late night Franks around like 10 o'clock, and I feel like the variety of food there is very basic. It could probably be expanded a little bit more.
So does it cut back at a certain time at night?
I feel like if you go around 10, there's just like fries and like chicken fingers, just like that's it.
And you'd like to see more of what?
I guess I don't know, maybe burgers, maybe salad.
Okay. Okay. Sir?
Two things. The first, I think, because Chartwell's, I understand they do focus groups, and they have students that give their input largely. They don't really make any drastic changes, especially like it's 2018 now, and I think that's an industry that's very behind in the times, like large scale food services. I would like to see some digital options, so students ordering food being able to pick it up.
You mean like on an app on their
the
phone?
actual infrastructure of getting food, because a lot of students don't know what food is available, and once they get there, it's not enjoyable. They don't get the food they want. It takes too long, especially before they come to class. Other food options at Colgate, like we just got Good Uncle, which is all tech based. That's very convenient. It's quick food, whatever the quality is. It's easy for students to get that.
Okay.
So I think the focus groups are good, but it just seems, and this would be more difficult, but it seems like that infrastructure change. And the second thing, the most popular student dining option wasn't even like a thing that they implemented. It was a person. It was their staffing. It's Ed at Livestream. For some reason, they moved him downhill to like hide out in the Donovan's kitchen, which students are really upset about. I don't know why they did that or what the thinking behind that was.
Okay.
But those two things I would say would really improve the dining experience on campus.
Okay, great. Good suggestions. Sir?
Building on that, I know that we touched on that, is like bringing back the Ed burgers that they would like pre-make. Yeah, like they're were a really nice thing at the end of the night. I'll put it that way.
Okay. We heard about those last year. That's pretty exciting. Somebody over here? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, the meal plan is like ridiculously expensive. Like it's incredibly expensive. And then like if I'm a senior and I'm off the hill and I want to get like a swipe, if you buy things like individually, like a Coop smoothie should be $70. So I just feel like each itemized thing is really expensive, and then a meal plan is also like way too expensive.
Okay.
So.
Good point.
I mean, I don't even have a meal plan anymore, but what someone was saying earlier about like sickness really does spread around campus, and I think a lot has to do with there's a lot of parts of Frank and even the Coop where people can just like stick their hands in, or like I don't know how often the like serving things are being changed, and that could be like a giant improvement for everyone's life.
Okay. Other comments, sir?
Yeah, something I noticed in Frank was it's obviously the student's responsibility after they eat to pick up their food and plates and napkins to the table, but a lot of times I go in like virtually all the tables are like very gross in terms of like food particles.
In
and
Frank?
Yeah, the Coop is, I would say, is better, but there doesn't really seem to be a specific staff member in Frank who's like cleaning tables. There's like someone sometimes, but there's no one dedicated to that fully.
So again, cleanliness issue.
Yeah, I would say that's the worst part of like cleanliness in Frank, and then the smelling of that conveyor belt.
Right.
This is a question. So as you are working on diversifying the menus and
improving the cleanness, would it gonna affect the price that we're gonna charge for our meal plan?
My short answer would be no. We don't make those decisions ultimately. I mean, but I don't think that, again, I don't see a connection between the price you're paying now, which is a good price.
No, the things that, for example, one of the discontinuous topic is that diversifying the frank food in between that hours. That means that at this point of time, they did not serve enough food for the students. But if it's going to be changed, then the frank dining room should invest more money and for resources.
Well, I mean, it's kind of it's not complicated, but there are other aspects to serving food efficiently too, and one of them has to do with the way the facility is designed. And Frank is, by all measures, an older facility that was probably designed in 1984. And in 1984, the way food is, you know, the types of food, the way food is ordered, the way it's prepared, the variety of food that's, you know, typical in a lot of university dining venues today. That venue, I don't think was ever designed to support, and even the volume. So if physically the building is redesigned or some of that space, and whether it's Frank or whether it's the Coop or whether it's Donovan's Pub or whether it's the Hebrew Cafe in ways to permit the efficient delivery of food, I mean, ultimately, we don't make the decisions here, the recommendations, but we would not recommend a price increase to address the issues associated with the diverse requirements of the menu, or cleanliness, or basic sanitation. So no.
I think something to consider a little more longer term is that next year with the 2 new residence halls opening up on the Hill, you're going to have a couple more hundred people here on campus. And that's going to keep building, which means more people in existing facilities, things are going to be more crammed, and cleanliness may become even a bigger issue. So I think it's even more important that we focus on this now while those people are not here, take care of it, fix it so that when they do come, things can be smooth.
Agreed. And that might have something to do with the timing of us beginning now. So if there were some short-term changes that could be made to address that, they could be in place by next fall. Yeah.
I think it would be awesome if like you could use like your meal swipes down the hill at restaurants.
Okay.
Because like I would probably do that. I think that would also like get rid of some of the congestion at dining halls because like I think if people had the option to go downtown, they totally would.
Are there some restaurants down there that are more popular than others where you'd like to be able to go?
Like Rig.
Rig.
That would be awesome. Like
Rig.
maybe the Eatery.
Eatery. Okay.
So maybe like 2 more comments, by the way.
Pardon me?
Maybe 2 more comments.
2 more comments. Okay. 2 more people that haven't made a comment.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Really, one of the biggest things that I'm concerned with is like the sustainability and the amount of waste, particularly in the Coop and the library cafe. Like everything's plastic and paper, and I know that my freshman year there was reusable silverware and dinnerware in the Coop, and they got rid of it. And I understand there are problems with that, like students just taking the materials. But I really think like looking forward to the future, that should be something on the agenda.
And that's a very good observation. And there's also an issue, challenges, and that's part of what we need to address to recommend renovations or expansions, to put an adequately sized dish room in the Coop so that the dishes can actually be washed. I mean, I know there might have been other issues too, but there also needs to be space to functionally support that. But those are exactly, that's the kind of feedback we're looking for to help inform some of those decisions and strategies. One more question? Somebody who hasn't asked a question? Or somebody that has asked a question? Sir?
Someone may have alluded to this before, but if there could be like an online menu, just because like people who have swipes or a limited amount of swipes swiping with Frank, you don't know what you're going to get really, and it might be you as a decent swipe.
So kind of like what this gentleman referred to earlier, like that, I guess it's called Good Uncle, where you can order food, but if you had the ability to, are you suggesting to have an app where you could order food from one of your dining venues and use your meal plan to pay for it?
No, not even like or just like see what is being
Oh, just,
served?
okay, just to see what's being
Yeah.
posted on the menus that day or that week in all the different locations.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is that it?
Okay, thank you very much.
Just a reminder, we are doing a survey, we're preparing it. It'll probably take about a week or so to get it drafted, approved. The school's got to approve it. So if you do see an email come by about food service, please take a few moments to fill it out. Because again, it just helps inform the process for us. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving on. So we're gonna skip baking club for tonight and move on to the Colgate political review. So if we could have a representative from them.
Yeah, can I say something quickly?
Of course.
So, my name's Dewey, I'm a liaison. I've been missing some meetings since I have a scheduling conflict. But just a quick little spiel about this. So we're voting on whether Senate wants to, this isn't just a formality, this is really, we're deciding whether we want to, by recognizing these clubs, kind of invest in these clubs. They've already been recognized by CLSI, they've already been operating for a semester. They've been clubs for a while, for a whole semester. They just now are coming for SGA recognition to have access to the BAC, something that we all put money into. So by approving them, we're all kind of saying that we agree that these are clubs that are providing something that we need on campus, something that isn't currently on campus, and something that can operate in a sustainable way. So when these guys leave, the heads of the club leave, that this continues and continue to help campus and in a non-discriminatory and inclusive manner. So be thinking about that when these guys present, when you can ask them questions. Yeah, so sorry for the Colgate political review.
All right, so yeah, Colgate political review.
Hi everybody, so this is the first time I'm doing this. So I am the executive editor of the Colgate Political Review. Our advisor is Professor Sam Rosenfeld, who's a poli-sci professor here. And basically our structure is that we have an editor-in-chief, two executive editors, myself and another one, and we have a managing editor who basically goes to all the writers and makes sure they're giving the articles on time, in a timely manner. And then myself, the other executive editor, and our editor-in-chief, we edit those articles, send them back if they need to be edited or changed, or if they're too controversial, we go back to the writer and basically say, like, this is not something that we want to publish. We need you to, we'll talk with them basically and figure out a solution. So we've been operating since last semester. We started this in the beginning of last semester. So basically, what we've been doing is we have a website up and running. We've been running it. We didn't have too many new members last semester, but over the summer we got a huge influx of a lot of incoming freshmen that wanted to write for us. We're in the process of publishing a couple of those articles, and it's a really, really exciting time for us because it's starting to pick up. And the last thing we've seen is SGA approval. Like I said, like Louis said, we've been approved by the CLSI, and so basically we just want to, we need funding to run the website, and we also want to move into print, and so that we could be more of a presence on campus. And I can tell people would want to ask about the Maroon News versus us, and what we do that's different is that we allow the writers to write about whatever they want, so that you're not assigned a topic to write. You basically come to the editorial staff and say, I want to write about this. I write about, for instance, I've written articles about entertainment, like the Fox-Disney merger. We have written about politics. We had one of the freshmen email us about Brett Kavanaugh and his appointment. So it varies, and it really varies on what you learn about, and there's no restrictions, just to make sure that there's a plagiarism and the normal restrictions that would go on any article, any publication. So.
All right, does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, because I've actually looked at the website and I've liked the articles, but I've noticed that there's not a lot of them, especially more recently. Are you working on ways to make sure that there's a consistent output, especially if you want to be publishing?
Yeah. So basically, what we're doing is with this year we've been trying to figure out, like, we're trying to work getting approval, but we've also been getting articles out. We published a few articles this semester in just the past couple weeks, I think 3 or 4 articles. But we have a rolling submission policy. So basically whenever people want to submit, they submit and then we publish. It's not like a set deadline for, every person has an article on September 15th. It's, kind of catered to your academic schedule, which we find to be really, really unique. But yeah, so once we have to start to pick out more and we can get the word out more with approval and everything, we will be able to start publishing more and more articles. Yeah.
So you mentioned that anyone who works there can come to you and find out what they want. Is this strictly political journalism, or is it any journalism?
Any journalism. So like I said, I don't write political articles for these. I've written 4 articles. None of them have been political in nature. They've all been about entertainment, just because I know more about that field. But it can be political. It cannot be political. Whatever the writer wants it to be. We do stress that it's a personal article. It's a personal view of the writer. That's what we really want to convey.
Well, I just want to know, if it's not strictly political, why is it the Colgate political?
Well, because it started out as a political publication, and then we realized over the course of last semester that we can broaden our view.
Can I get why would you want to do that?
Broaden our view.
Yeah, why?
Well, just because we realized that there isn't really a publication on campus that keeps students up to date with world events in a more personal way. I'm from New York City, and I really came to Colgate and I realized that I was more cut off from issues that I wasn't in the city. That's just living around, not looking at the news every day. And we wanted a publication that'd be able to talk about what's going on in the world and also get students' opinions on what's going on.
Just kind of on that note, so what's your review's central focus? Is it on bringing real world issues to elaborate on them with the students' point of view, or just because I'm saying if everyone's writing about anything, do you have a focus? Or?
Yeah, so it's really just bringing world events and showing the campus what's going on and also what students are thinking about these events.
You might have said, did you guys say you were planning on going to actual printing or no?
Yes, we are. So we need funding, but if we were approved, we would want to eventually go print. Not weekly, but we would want to print semi-regularly, maybe monthly or so.
But you would have articles being posted much more frequently.
Yes, so the print is basically just what we have on the website so far, the new articles for that month, but we would be publishing articles to the website as soon as they're ready to go.
What type of budget are you kind of anticipating?
So we're looking at, we're hoping to be a tier 3 organization. So, numbers I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I can get to, once I go back to my editorial staff and figure it out, but not, a wildly high budget.
How many active writers would you estimate you have right now?
So, well, the entire editorial staff, we're also active writers. So I'd say there's at least, there's the 3 of us that are the 2 executive editors and editor-in-chief. We also have about 13 or so writers on the website written up, and then we also have, I'd say, about 10 other writers that have come to us just this year with an article, brand new, so they haven't been written up on the website just yet with their name and with a certain position. But we are, I'd say, 10 to 15 new writers emailed us this year, and more coming in.
Do writers need to fit specific qualifications you guys set, or just demonstrate a general ability to produce?
There's no requirements. It's really, we want to hear from everyone. So I mean, if the article is it's not readable, then we work with the writer and say you need to work on this, or if they plagiarize something or something's wrong, we basically talk with them. But there are no requirements. Anyone can write for us. Yeah.
I know it's very current event based. In order to make sure that all the facts are that are presented in the article are true, or you as editors coming through and also fact checking things.
Yeah, so we're fact checking. We're plugging into plagiarism websites, our checkers, to make sure that they're not just copying and pasting stuff. Yeah, so we come through it very thoroughly, make sure every article is up to our standards. Yeah.
Motion to vote.
We can't do that yet until we're done with the questioning. I do appreciate that. Any other questions? All right. Now I'll accept the motion to vote. We have seconds. All in favor?
Wait. Did you check if there are any other motions?
Before, before, I just wanted to make sure before we asked our friends to leave the room.
Yeah, well, in any case, you should leave the room for motions.
Cool. Okay, so if you could please leave.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Okay. And Dewey, if you want to say something about them before we get into voting.
Yeah, just want to say real quickly, one of the best things about Colgate Politically is their website. If you haven't checked it out, you really should. It's up to date, personal articles, and it's really well made. So that's one of the, having like a web-based editorial, really mainly editorial, newspaper is huge for this campus. So, and they've been operating for a while. So,
yeah, thanks, Dewey. All right. Do we have any other motions besides the motion to vote? Cool. So all in favor of that motion? All right. So the ayes do have it. If we could open up the polls.
Poll is up and ready to go.
All right. So make sure to press A to approve, B to not approve. And yeah, we'll wait like 30 seconds.
And C for abstention.
C for abstention. Lucy, what's the count of people present? Just for reference. Did you not get them?
We are 38, should be.
I've got 35 so far.
35 so far. Make sure to get in your votes.
36.
36. Okay. I guess it's a good time to close. Anyone has anything to say? Okay, cool. So what is the results?
Motion carries 35 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention.
Nice. Okay, if you could move them back. Let them know. Cool. Keep moving. Okay. So moving on. So we have the Colgate Actuarial Society. So if the representative could come up, introduce their organization.
So hi, I'm Jonathan Aguilera and I'm the president of the Colgate Actuarial Society. We started out actually last year, early September, and we've just been trying to inform the campus about what actuarial science is, what actuaries do, and just overall trying to get more actuaries come speak to Colgate, whether mainly through webinars. So probably the first question I'm going to be asked is what is an actuary, and what makes it different from finance or consulting, and the other business groups in Colgate that are also necessary and just all different. So basically actuaries are these just mixing up math, statistics, and risk theory in order to do all of these macro level calculations for insurance firms mainly. They're the people who use probability to see what's the likelihood of an accident occurring, what are the damages that will be coming out of a hurricane, and it's essentially just creating all these models for pensions and other annuities and things like that. Depending on which sector you're in, mainly going to be in insurance, but you could also work for the government or the schools exactly, you know. It could vary, but overall, the overall purpose of being an actuary is the same as that you're risk forecasters. You're working on a macro level, working for an entire company rather than a financial planner, which is working with a person. So, and also just if you know what an underwriter is, this is that on a much bigger level. So, last year, some of the issues were just not using all the resources on campus and just trying to get more aid from the other business clubs. And overall, I can see that we have improved on that aspect. I've been working with career services over the last year and trying to be in contact with more alumni and being able to get them to speak with us. And we actually have gone down. Wesley Gross, an actuary at EY, spoke to us last year. Most recently, we've had a panel of 3 data scientists, which I'll go into more later. And also just like Des Cairns of Cigna has been able to like speak with us like personally, like in person. And to like give it like his like whole like experience of being an actuary and like how he got to be one, and just specifically like how his Colgate education has benefited him. So I'm here because like we were trying to seek funding for study materials because in order to become an actuary, you have to like take these like rigorous exams. And the purpose of this like society is to prepare students for like the first 2 exams and like a 6-exam track. Because like after you pass like the exams for financial mathematics and probability, you'll be able to like secure an internship and be able to like study on the job and like be set and ready to go. So on the probability side of things, we do have a course called like probability and like one after that called mathematical statistics that I believe is like sufficient for like being like prepared for the exam. Mainly the study material I'm asking for is in financial mathematics, specifically because like that exam has been like done over like the past year in 2017. They took out like a lot of things on derivatives, but like introduced new things on the theory of interest that I think would be like useful for like learning, because we don't really offer like specific like finance courses here at Colgate. And in addition, just we are seeking like funding for like advertising such as posters. Overall, we'd probably be aiming to be just like a tier 1 organization. The initial budget I had planned out was like $250, like not too much. Again, like we're mainly operating through webinars and stuff, like in person, like just like meetings, you know.
Do we have any questions?
Are you gonna make actual investment based on your work?
Could you like explain that like further? Like I don't, like what do you mean?
So like you're gonna do some project with economics as well, right?
No, like the purpose of this club is mainly just like know like what an actuary is and just like to prepare for the exams. Like actual actuarial work is like very like hard to do like in the like as an undergrad really, because you have to be able to like access like all these databases and like linear regression models. But I actually do like how you brought that up, because there is like a separate aspect to this club in the sense that we've expanded to data science. Since basically like what I learned like over the summer is that like actuaries and data scientists do have a lot in common, and that they use like all these like statistics and linear regressions and like handling data in order to like make a model. Just that actuaries are more business focused with like pensions and stuff, and like data scientists are more like into just like the whole machine learning aspect, such as like Google and like how like their version of like Google Alexa works, their Google Assistant, which we like discussed in our data panel like a few days ago.
What's your current interest or students involved in this organization?
In our introductory meeting, we had 8 members like come in and like sign in, and at our most recent panel, it was around like 6 or so. So again, like with just like more advertising, we just hope like sustain like a nice niche like in this campus.
I don't doubt your interest in actuarial sciences. I think you have a great passion for it. Is there somebody in this organization 2-3 years down the line that will be just as passionate as you are? Because when it comes down to it, a lot of clubs come here and there's really passionate people like you, and then 2 years down the line, nobody picks it up, and then it's just a hassle for Drew because nobody wants to do the paperwork, nobody comes in meetings. Just can you find one person in your group or 2 people that you can say 2 years down the line, this person will take it up?
I do actually. Like just like from the introductory meeting alone, there's this like one student that's been actually like already studying for the financial mathematics exam on his own, and he like specifically like helped me like design the budget like and just like picking out like which like workbook would be like the best like obtain with this fund.
Any other questions? All right, so if you could head out before we do any.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jonathan actually came to us last year to apply for SGA recognition, and he was turned down. He's come a long way with his financial or fiscal responsibility, having concrete plans for what they want to do, and also their collaboration with other clubs like Math and Finance Club. It might seem like there's not a lot of members, but he's right. This is a small club that fills a niche in the community that is currently no one is filling, and it's important. It's an important addition to the community. So, yeah.
Question for Dewey. Do you remember why we turned him down last year? I can't remember why.
Yeah, so he didn't have very concrete plans on what he wanted to spend money for. That was really his biggest issue. He's come back with, he wants to, like, the textbooks, the workbooks, and getting ready for the exams is really his biggest additions, because last semester he was kind of just wanted money and didn't know what they would do with the money. But yeah, he's actually, and the number is grown, and having someone younger who can continue the club is huge too. But yes, that's the biggest growth we've seen is in fiscal responsibility.
All right. Thank you, Dewey. Motions? Any questions or motions? Yes.
Motion to vote.
Do we have seconds? Any other motions? All right. All in favor of our senator's motion? All right. It looks like the ayes have it. So if we could go into voting.
Polls up.
Cool.
Got 37 votes, so I'm closing it.
All right.
35 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
All
Motion
right.
carries.
Thank you, Dewey. So that's it for clubs. So announcements. So first of all, the All SGA meeting is on Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Be there at B Square. Anyone else have announcements?
I just want to thank you all for the long meeting. I know it sounds really tedious, but everything that we did today was very important. Like, free speech will affect people for years to come down the line, and I just want to know like your work is appreciated, and thank you so much for staying the whole time.
And also with the All SGA meeting, everyone is asked to be there, mandatory, it's one thing I'm going to do there. Has to be real. Everyone's going to stand up, and people are asked to speak, so if you're one of those people, you should know you got an email from me. And you can actually what I'm talking about, please see me.
All right, Micah?
Did anybody happen to grab the top to that pen right there? I kind of need it. I just noticed it's not there. On the floor or something? Anyway, if you mistakenly grabbed onto that.
All right. With no other announcements, the chair would be in favor of a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks everyone, great work. Leave the clickers up here before you go.
Yeah, make sure to leave your clickers here and don't take them home. Thanks. What is a pen? They're not to keep.
Yes, it's right on the table there. Thank you so much. Perfect. You want it? No. Somebody? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm excited. Thank you.
It probably won't be there next time.
Well, I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Got the bag over here.
No idea where they are.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, 1 hour delay.